following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. I generally speak with the most interesting people in the world on a regular basis. I have a flow of folks who are in the lineup, so to speak. We talk politics, we talk ball. I fight the unholy trinity, which is big business, government, and organized religion. I think they combine to really screw up society, and on this podcast I point it out on a regular basis. And I guess my point is very few things inspire me to do a solo show. I've got guests who are much more interesting than I could ever hope to be. And I use that effectively to have what I consider to be a progressive podcast. I'm open-minded. I'm very far to the left, no question about that. But I see everybody's point, and I think the discussions are well balanced. It's a great podcast. Now, when I go solo, that's another thing. But you're going to have to put up with this because, as many of you know, I am a fanatical baseball fan and an even more fanatical New York Mets fan. And last night, this is, September 4th, 2019. Last night, the Mets blew a 10-4 lead in the ninth inning. And this is September baseball. They are improbably, it was absolutely improbable going into last night's game that they could be in a position where they were, where they're still in contention for the wild card. Or the wild card, depending on how you pronounce it, the wild card. It's like the Wild Wild West. We have the wild card. But there's a wild card playoff thing in baseball, and the Mets were very much in contention after an up-and-down season that made we fans crazy go nuts a lot of times. And that's good and bad. They came back, and they were doing terrifically, and then they slumped. Then they won again. They won a couple of games again. They handled Philadelphia beautifully, all things considered. And last night, like I say, they blew, just basically putting them out of contention. It was the biggest lead they've ever had, or whatever it was. It was all-time biggest fuck-up in Met history. So I just thought I'd get on the air and just vent about it and tell you that it's not always easy being a Met fan. Now, I'll tell you why it's not easy, because my cohorts on the Mets show on the Comfortably Zoned Network, it's especially not easy because they are preparing, living in Florida as they do, Robert Cole and Marty Rose, they are preparing for a hurricane. So the Mets show for this week is this show. And I don't want it to be all negative. I just want to tell you that sometimes being a Met fan it brings back wonderful memories. And what I do, one of the things that I've been doing for the past 3 or 4 months, is I have through the network, Comfortably Zoned Network, we produce what is called This Date in New York Mets History, where we look back on whatever date we're in, and I get some pictures, I put them with a slideshow, and I relive the memories on something that I'm really enjoying doing. And I thought I'd relive a very positive memory that came up this week. It happened to be either Marv Throneberry's birthday or something that he did that he accomplished, good, bad, or indifferent, on this date. It was earlier in the week, and it was also the week that in 1965, on the same date in 1965 as Marv's being mentioned, Casey Stengel had his number retired officially by the Mets after he broke his hip, was forced into retirement, and right in the middle of the baseball season in July, and the Mets got around to officially retiring Casey's number, 37. It was, like I say, the same day that Marv had his birthday or something like that. And the memory that came to mind for me was Casey Stengel on Marv's birthday saying, "We was going to give you a cake, but we were afraid you'd drop it." That was, if you're in tune with Met lore at all, my point is that Met fans, their memories don't have to be positive ones to be enjoyable, to look back upon. Well, this happened, it wasn't great, but they got beat here. But last night's crushing victory or they stole defeat from the jaws of victory, that kind of thing, that really hurt. And so I'm on the internet this morning getting other Met fans' reaction. They all feel pretty much the same way. They're stunned, but no more stunned. I'm putting everything into perspective as being a Met fan. No more stunned than I was in Oakland in 1973 when I attended turns out, so far, the only World Series game I've ever been to in person. For one reason or another, the Mets were playing the Oakland A's. It was the 6th game. They had the chance. They were up. They could have clinched whatever it was. I think they were up 3-2 in games. And I attended. I sat in right field in the upper deck. I watched Charlie Finley and who was it? Jack Benny. Charlie Finley had Jack Benny throw out the first pitch of that game. And now, years later, Nancy Finley, Charlie's niece, and a regular on the Comfortably Zoned Network, has become my friend and sent me a beautiful picture of her uncle and Jack Benny standing together at that game. Pretty cool. But that was, I must admit, them losing that game to a Met fan like me who was following them ever so closely. Even though I lived in California and I had moved to California, and was living out here, I remained very loyal to that team, and I was crazy about that 73 team that team came back from early on adversity, many injuries. Buddy Harrelson was injured early on. Guys went into the reserves, this and that. They were playing catch up from the word go. They get to the World Series. They're ahead 3-2. They lose a game in front of my very eyes, and I knew that they would lose the next day. I walked out of that stadium really feeling bad. My point is, last night was the same feeling. It's been a long up and down season. They had a chance. They blew a game that I do not think, if this team comes back, if they're resilient enough to come back and put on a streak and get back into it after that, I would be very, very surprised. That was a devastating blow, and I doubt, just given their manager Callaway's the experience I've seen him have, he's like a deer in the headlights when it comes to stuff like this. So I do not think he's capable of rounding up the troops. But again, you're a Met fan, you're a sports fan, it's the up and down. What if he can? Imagine, and this is how a good sports fan should be. You look to the future with hope. It could be that they'll come back. So I wanted to vent about the Mets. I want this to serve as the weekly Mets show, and I wanted to say that there are memories that you look back upon that don't have to be good, but they could be pleasant to look back upon, vis-a-vis the Marv Throneberry. The Casey Stengel retirement thing, they listed his record was so bad as a Met. Unbelievable how they were, but again, within 3 years of his retirement, they were world champions. So it's great to be a Met fan some days. Some days it's not great to be a Met fan. Today it was especially not good to be a Met fan, thinking about last night's debacle. But I had to share it with you. That's all part of life as a fanatical sports fan. On the other hand, more importantly, like I said, is the horrible hurricane that's already devastated the Bahamas, and we don't know where it's going from moment to moment. It's amazing. I'm an old Jew, and old Jews are it's almost the law, supposed to retire in Florida. I'm a scofflaw. I'm in California. That could be me, and it is indeed many of my friends and loved ones in Florida. So word goes out to you out there. Good luck, and buckle down and get through it. I'm sure you will. We Americans are resourceful. We have a president now that says literally he wants to nuke nuclear weapons against the hurricane to stop the hurricane with nuclear weapons. So with these troubled times, and I really think, to be serious for a second, the man is fucking deranged. And it's scary because he has his finger on the button and a lot of other things. So sports are a diversion for me. With these scary times, putting everything into perspective, good, bad, or indifferent. The Mets give me pleasure. Thank you for listening, everybody. This is Ralph Tycho, and I will be back at you soon as can be. Adios. The proceeding has been a comfortably zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.